video. A lot going on. A lot down in Olympia, a little bit around the rest of the state, and a lot back in Washington, D.C., the other Washington. Quick recap. We are today, on the last day of February, at the fiscal cutoff at the state capitol in Olympia. That means that bills that have a fiscal impact, that are related to the budgets or to spending directly, have to be through their committees by today. If they're not, they're considered dead. They're considered stopped, at least for this legislative session. Of course, as I mentioned before, no bill in Olympia or DC is ever really dead. But if the bills don't make it through their fiscal committees today, then they're sort of dead. They're semi-dead. They're comatose for the rest of this leg session. We talked before about some of the bad bills that the Republicans in the legislature in Olympia were able to stop at the committee level, so they didn't go forward. I've had a few questions about, well, what are the bad ones that got through, that are still alive, that we need to worry about? And I'll mention just a couple of those very quickly. One of the bills that a lot of people are concerned about is House Bill 1399. That's the one that changes the way sheriffs are treated in Washington state. It does a couple of things. It gives the governor the ability to remove from office or otherwise decertify a sheriff, an elected sheriff in a county, if that sheriff does things the governor doesn't like. But more importantly, that bill moves in the direction in state policy away from sheriffs being elected by the people of their counties and changing to where a sheriff would be appointed, hired by a county commission or a county council. So the county commissioners would hire the sheriff. That is not good. Most of us in the Republican Party believe strongly that sheriffs need to be elected by the people of their counties, that as the highest law enforcement officer in that area, in that county, it's important that the sheriff have the direct charge and mission and support of the people of the county, the voters in the county. We believe very strongly that that allows sheriffs to be independent and, when appropriate, which is most of the time, very focused on constitutional law. That's a good thing. And we believe that if you change the system to where sheriffs are appointed, you're less likely to get that independent sensibility in a sheriff. Another bad bill is House Bill 1163. That's one of the bad anti-gun rights bills going through the legislature. We've been able, as Republicans in the legislature, to stop a number of the bad gun bills, but a couple of them have gotten through the committee level. And this 1163, which would require a new state-issued permit to buy or sell any firearm, and it would require a certain kind of training and classroom work, as well as live fire training, in order to get this new permit that would allow a person to buy or sell a firearm. It is a badly written bill. It's badly drafted, badly conceived. It has a whole bunch of sort of technical errors in it, weird references to different sections within the proposal. And of course, it has constitutional problems. Both our state constitution here in Washington and the federal constitution protect your right to keep and bear a firearm in defense of yourself and your family and your neighborhood. The Washington State Constitution, Article 1, Section 24 is the part that talks about firearms rights, is even clearer than the federal Constitution. And really it defends that right. It says it shall not be impaired in any way. And we believe that requiring a state-issued permit that people would have to pay to get and take a class to get is impairing that constitutional right. And then the last bad bill that is stumbling along in Olympia still is House Bill 1380. That has to do with homeless camping. It would create a homeless person's Bill of Rights, essentially, saying that a homeless person has the right to camp in public space. This, again, has all kinds of legal problems in it. It runs against the current standard in law about homeless camping, formed primarily by a federal appeals court decision called the City of Grants Pass, Oregon, that says that cities have the right to restrict where homeless people can camp. And cities have the right to pass a local ordinance, a local law that says homeless people can't camp in a park or near an elementary school or things like that. The Grants Pass court decision is important, and I believe it's good law. I believe this proposal in Olympia violates that and a bevy of other laws too. Also, it limits local control. It opposes local control. Cities and counties ought to be able to make up their own rules about how they deal with homeless campers. So that's another bad one that's staggering along. I should say too, and you've heard me say it before, a lot of the current legislative session in Olympia is going to deal with budgets and taxes. There are a number of bad tax proposals that are still alive in Olympia. One of them would lower the vote threshold required to pass a bond, like a school bond or other bond. Right now in Washington State, to pass a local bond for schools or for other local entities, you need a 60% vote in favor of the bond for it to pass. This proposal would lower that to 50%, a simple majority. We believe that's a bad idea. It's bad because bonds are borrowing, and they tie up taxpayers for multiple years, often 20 years. And that's the reason why requiring a 60% supermajority is better public policy than a simple majority on that one. And because the state government matches, particularly school bonds, local school bonds, if we make more school bonds easier to pass and more money borrowed that way, the state's match portion will be larger, and that draws state government money away from other projects, which will probably result in a call for raising other taxes. So this is an indirect tax increase too. There are more direct tax increases that have been proposed, including the so-called per mile tax on vehicles that you'd have to pay every year based on how many miles you drive, including an increase in the real estate excise tax. That's a fee you pay when you buy or sell a house or other real estate. And an increase to the business and occupation tax. And there are a bunch of other tax increases that are being proposed and are still in the mix in Olympia. The Washington State Republican Party believes that taxes are high enough in Washington State, particularly property taxes, and we do not support any proposal to raise taxes. We believe that the legislature in Olympia needs to do a better job of writing streamlined and cost-effective budgets. That's where we need to look for savings. Now, I mentioned that there's something going on too in DC. You're probably hearing or reading about a lot of things in the media about layoffs happening at federal government bureaucratic agencies. Locally, that a lot of the focus has been on the Department of Interior and NOAA, one of its divisions. You're hearing a lot of talk about potential cuts at the Veterans Administration, the VA, federal agency, and other federal agencies. There's been a lot of media kind of hysterics about this. The truth is, the Trump administration in DC is reviewing staffing levels at a number of federal agencies. That's true. But they are dedicated and focused on not cutting back on essential services and not cutting back on the people who provide those essential services. The focus of the Trump administration's belt tightening at these federal agencies has been on newer hires, provisional or probationary hires, and also looking at subdivisions of those bureaucratic agencies that just aren't producing results. This is a good thing. It's part of the Federal Department of Government Efficiency's brief, their mission. DOGE is meant to look at efficiency and cost effectiveness of federal agencies. The left, which doesn't want to see any cuts to federal agencies or state agencies or government on any level, is screaming and crying that these cuts that DOGE and the Trump administration are advocating will wreck bureaucratic agencies. They won't. They are surgical, they are tightly focused, with a mission to not interrupt essential services, but look for efficiencies and cost effectiveness in federal bureaucratic agencies and give taxpayers a break. At the Republican Party in Washington, we believe that's good public policy. We believe taxpayers are due for relief, not more taxes. That's it for this week. I'll update you again next week on how things are going both in Olympia and DC. But we're optimistic here at the WaGOP that we are beginning to turn public policy for the better and focus a bright light on the bad practices of big government. Until next week, be well and stay strong.